everybody. I'm Rasco.
And I'm Connor Nielsen, and welcome to the first episode of a new series on Geekvolution. Uh, Me and Rasco are going to be discussing and reviewing and talking about new release movies. So today we're going to be talking about and reviewing and discussing uh, two movies today, Arrival and Shut In. And I didn't get around to seeing Almost Christmas, so we'll maybe talk about that next week. But before we get into any discussions and reviews, we are going to be talking about the weekend box office. Coming in at number 10 was the Ron Howard adaptation of the Dan Brown film Inferno, starring Tom Hanks and Felicity Jones, continuing to underperform at $3.3 million. Number 9 was Jack Reacher Never Go Back, the sequel, the Tom Cruise sequel to the Tom Cruise 2012 film that came just barely in over Inferno with $3.4 million. Making waves in its debut at number 8 was Shut In at $3.6 million. Number 7 is Boo! A Medea Halloween, dropping from the dropping significantly after the Halloween weekend to $3.6 million. Coming out at number 6 is The Accountant, $4.5 million. And number 5 is Hacksaw Ridge, continuing to impress at $10.7 million. And number 4 is the new Almost Christmas with $15.2 million. At number 3, definitely surprising and coming in over projections, is Arrival with $24.1 million. Number 2, continuing to drop at a surprisingly low rate, is Trolls, continuing to be in second place after debuting in second place last week with $35 million. And still, number 1 for 2 weeks in a row is Doctor Strange. How do you feel about these numbers, Rasco?
Okay, so I think that Doctor Strange has done better than was originally expected to in its opening weekend. And I know that Marvel has to be happy about that. Like, I think a lot of people maybe expected that to potentially, like, if you didn't know the character, it's possible that you could have thought that would maybe do around Ant-Man numbers, but I think it's done better than that by quite a bit. And I think Marvel definitely is probably pleased with that film and how well it's been received by people, both critically and financially.
Yes, Doctor Strange was expected to come into that a little over the first Thor movie and the first Captain America movie, about 65, and it ended up doing $85 million in its opening weekend. It dropped to 43, but it's still it's doing higher than expected.
Yeah, and there's going to be a lot of, you see, I think like there's going to be kind of like overflow of really good movies. So I don't think that a movie like Doctor Strange is going to have the legs that a movie like Hacksaw Ridge will moving into like award season and stuff like that, because there is the movies that have more buzz around them, other movies that are going to that more people are going to be talking about. So like Doctor Strange probably won't have like extremely long legs, but like a movie like Hacksaw Ridge is going to probably stay in theaters a little bit longer, I would actually think, than Doctor Strange, maybe because of awards and stuff like
And
that.
then, yeah, I see that. It did not have a big drop off from week 1 to week 2. And it's staying in the top 5, which is impressive. And speaking of awards buzz, Arrival was expected to make around 16, and it made 24.1 million. So that's very impressive. I know Amy Adams is getting a lot of awards buzz for her performance, and I'm thinking this is going to have a best adapted screenplay. I know this is pretty much the beginning of Oscar season, but that adapted screenplay and definitely cinematography and maybe even a best director award nomination for Denis Villeneuve. Now we're going to get into discussion reviews. So the first thing we're going to talk about is Arrival. So we're going to try to keep it spoiler free, but it probably helps to maybe see the movies to inform this discussion. But what did you think of Arrival, Rasco?
Okay, so say the name of this director, because I can't pronounce his name. I'm sorry.
I heard it pronounced this way, and I haven't heard anybody say not to pronounce it this way. I say Denis Villeneuve.
Denis Villeneuve. That's how we're gonna
Yes.
say it. Okay. Actually, can we just call him DV? Let's call him DV for short, right? So,
Okay, DV.
so DV, he's directed Prisoners. He directed Sicario. He directed Prisoners, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And Enemy.
And Enemy and Sicario. And now we have Arrival. So I've seen all of his films, And I'm probably the least familiar with Prisoners and Enemy because those are the ones that I watched the longest ago. So coming into this movie, not being super familiar with them because those are all movies that I watched not knowing they were all directed by the same person. Looking back on it, I can totally see that they were all directed by the same person. And I absolutely love this guy on a atmospheric level when it comes to just the vibes that he sends through every different aspect of how you can make a movie. So like the music serves an ominous tone. The visuals are shown to you and kind of conducted in a way that just kind of is chilling and weird, and you never really know if you should feel an edge or an awe. And like that's what's so great about this movie. I really like this film, but I honestly don't know how it probably like. I need to see it again. This is the movie this is one of those movies you have to watch a second time. Having only seen it once, I really liked this movie.
I did too. I really liked it, and I should probably mention that the movie that made DV, Mr. Villeneuve, very popular and got him to direct stuff like Prisoners here in America. He made a movie called Incendie. I think I'm trying to remember. I think he's Canadian, French Canadian. If I had to wager a guess, maybe he comes from Europe. I don't know. Either way, he made Incendie, and that was pretty popular when it was released. And so then he jumped on over to America and made Prisoners and Enemy and all the others. So, and then he's actually going to be directing Blade Runner 2049 next year, which I'm super stoked for. And you know what? This guy's super lucky. He gets to work with Roger Deakins, which is awesome. Great cinematographer. But yeah, this movie is really good. This was actually something that took me a little while to get into. Villeneuve's films, they're not really to my personal tastes, but I can understand that they're not my taste and adapt into see what he's trying to say. But I did have a hard time getting into it. It's at first a pretty impenetrable film, but by the time you get through it and you kind of get what's going on, then you find a way into it, and it works. And so watching it a second time, I think I will have a more emotional response to the opening and connect better with it on a second viewing. I think that there are some characters here that are just there to explain things to. Like the Forrest Whitaker character is really not intuitive, and he's like an army general. Like he asks, like, okay, so the aliens come and they ask her, hey, we want you to help us make contact with these aliens. And so she starts writing down like a bunch of really simple words. He's like, why are you wanting to teach them these words? This is what a kid would learn. Yeah, anyone with half a brain would think, oh, so they're probably wanting to she's probably trying to ease the aliens into our language. But because we need to explain that to the audience, we need to have Forrest Whitaker go, I don't get what's going on. Why are you telling him this? So that was a little frustrating. And man, poor Michael Stuhlbarg this year. So Michael Stuhlbarg is like one of the best character actors in the business right now. All right. Last year he was in Trumbo. He did a really good job in Trumbo as Edward G. Robinson. He was in Steve Jobs. And he was in something else. And then this year he's going to be in Miss Sloane, but he was in Doctor Strange and Arrival. And in both Doctor Strange and Arrival, he has been in the most nothing roles imaginable. And this one, he's just
agent. Guy on the computer guy.
Yeah, he's all right. I don't like this.
He's the guy that could throw a wrench in everyone's plans at the last minute if you don't keep your eye on him. Right?
Yeah.
He's that guy. Are you that guy that's going to try to screw us over in the end?
But he's one of the best character actors we have. If you've seen like Steve Jobs, he was excellent in that. He was a scene stealer in Trumbo, and there's one more he was in last year that I can't believe I'm biffing out on. But yeah, he always shows up at awards time, and I'm always excited to see Michael Stuhlbarg in these movies. So maybe he'll have his day this year in Miss Sloane. I'm really hoping, but I'm not hearing the best things about that movie. I'm really hearing stuff about Jessica Chastain in that movie. But all said, Arrival's really good. I like the atmosphere a lot. The cinematography has a lot of shallow focus, and I like the way they use it. I think the murky color palette is cold, but by the time you get to it, it's weirdly inviting. And I think that's the perfect tone for a Blade Runner sequel. I think it's a great recreation.
I'm so I think this is a great choice for a person to direct the sequel to Blade Runner that no one thinks should be made. if you're
Yeah,
me. But like, I think
me
he's a
too.
great choice. Like, he's I don't know, like they haven't done anything that has really made me worry about the Blade Runner sequel yet. But I mean,
Yeah,
there's a lot of ways to mess that up.
the only thing that was kind of worrisome is it said, "Oh, we're releasing it in January." And I'm like, "What?" They said, "Oh, never mind. We're releasing it sometime later in the year." So, um, but I guess like the one thing I'm being a little bit more putting my things I have a bit of issues with regarding Arrival out first. There are a couple of nitpicks I have, and these are nitpicks that aren't going to affect the score, but just little things I noticed, and a lot of them started to build up. But uh, the first half is pretty cold, and it was pretty hard for me to really get into what was happening. But when she's talking to the aliens, she like has her name like written on a whiteboard, and she's like, "Luis, my name's Luis," and somebody says, "Hey, what are you asking them?" I'm pretty sure them back there could, like, the aliens could hear the people all the way back there better than they can hear Amy Adams. She's like, "My name's Louise." Like, why are you speaking so softly? Like, talk to them. I don't get that. Maybe it is a psychology thing and like how to help people into languages to be soft. Maybe that's something I just didn't pick up on, but it was just a weird little detail I noticed. And
My name's Luis. Like you gotta say it like that. That's how you have to say it.
hey, aliens, what's up? My name's Luis.
What's my name? You're gosh
um,
darn right.
so and then like I like the design of the aliens. Um, they were kind of cool. I like how they look almost like hands, like knuckles. That was kind of cool. And I really like the twist in this movie. It was something that I was kind of piecing together as it was starting to really wrap up. And, oh, I get like at the top of the third act, I had a light bulb moment of, oh, I know what's happening. The one thing I do want to do is go back and see if they don't cheat on the twist because it's seeded throughout the film, and I want to know if this a certain character like okay the twist is built on a certain character coming to some knowledge, and then like it builds up through the film. I want to know if the twist is seeded before the character comes into that knowledge. I think that's doing a good job of skirting around it,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
so I want to see if it doesn't cheat. I don't think it does, but I just want to make sure it all fits. That being said, I thought Jeremy Renner was a really good comedic relief character. He's so good at like playing snarky characters, but also being being a nice fit into the ensemble. Uh, and I thought everyone gave a very solid performance, but the real star here, I think, is Villeneuve's storytelling and just how well told it all is, and as a really neat bundle and a neat package. And it kind of reminds me of a Twilight Zone episode, which I love the Twilight Zone, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think one of the coolest things about this is like it's very easy to come out of this movie and be like, okay, this was a science fiction movie about language in a lot of ways and a lot of ideas that kind of revolve around communication and language and I think that's really cool that you can like point directly to the really interesting science fiction idea we're kind of playing with in this film. Which I think you can do that with most science fiction movies, but like that's the very obvious, like, okay, that's the cool little thing that we're dealing with here in this case. We're exploring ideas through this concept of how we communicate with each other and stuff like that. And that's really cool. The twist, I think it's good to go into this movie knowing there's a twist only because you should pay attention from the very beginning. If you really like extra attention, like just be focused on this film, give it your full attention. Don't let the fact that it's kind of cold turn you away from it and kind of make you like wait to really invest yourself in. I think you should from the beginning know like this is a movie where it wants you to pay attention and it will pay off if you do in the end. And what I liked about the twist is that I predicted it before it happened. Like I didn't know going into the movie, but I did predict what the twist would be before you were supposed to know, and I was right, and that didn't ruin the twist for me at all because like I think that it was really perfectly seated in a way where like I think I just kind of made a jump and happened to be right. It wasn't that it was like an obvious conclusion you should have made. So I really like that.
The film doesn't show its hand, but it plays to its own rules, and I think that's why you were able to see that.
Yeah, this is one of those movies also that does it does this thing where it repeats certain shots, and I really like that in movies where it kind of like bookends and kind of it's different from like foreshadowing because it's not set up and payoff. But when a movie goes back to familiar things that it's shown you in the beginning towards the end, that's kind of a neat way to like bookend a film, I think, sometimes. When you find a way to use the same shot at different times and in different places in a story, and it can like mean different things. This movie does things like that.
And I think doing that is a really cool visual way to emotionally communicate with your audience.
Yeah. Just like the different, like how the same thing in different contexts and things like that. This movie is also great because it does the thing where there are things where like you literally will be caught so off guard that like there will be times in the movie where all of a sudden you're like, whoa, what did I just see? And you'll be confused about it. And that's great in movies like this where the mystery and the piecing together of what's going on is really interesting when you get random things thrown at you that you weren't ready to see. And just not to spoil anything, but like this is a movie that like, it's just regardless of whether or not it's your type of movie, I think there's obvious real attention to detail and how you structure a movie that you do want to be more, I guess, cerebral. But still make it entertaining. This movie, for me, I think this movie was really well paced for a slow film. And because I am someone who really does like a lot of movies that would be considered slow by a lot of people, I like that. I like atmospheric, trance-inducing films that kind of almost get you into like a rhythm. And that's another thing that the score in this movie does. Is it kind of gets
Great
you into
score,
like a
by the way.
Yeah,
great score, by the way.
It's awesome. It's so good, and it's so like minimalistic. It's awesome.
I want to say something about this movie, and I'm glad that you brought up what you just did because that's a great point. I loved the ending of this movie. The ending of this movie almost made me cry. It one of the best scenes I've seen all year long, like the last 5 minutes. And that's really where Johan Johansson, I think that's how you pronounce the fellow's name, that's where his score really kind of breaks the really eerie stuff and just really gets emotional. And when he gets emotional, he knows just how to get you. And the editing, the cinematography, the editing especially is incredible, but the music and the way it's repeating those shots and then it's like cutting back and forth. It was so, I got chills and I felt so much. And I just wanted to watch the movie immediately after it ended. And that's a great recommendation because it does feel long. Like it's 2 hours and it feels like 2 hours 15, 2 hours and a half. But that's okay. I'll gladly watch it again. But yeah, after a first watch, I might give this movie a 7.5 out of 10. I think if I watched it again, I might like it a lot more. I'd probably give it a higher score. But it's a really good movie and you should totally check it out. And that last scene though, second only to the Drive It Like You Stole It scene from Sing Street, it's the best movie of the year. Best scene of the year, I would say.
The ending of this film, like this was literally how I was watching it in the theater. I'm sitting back and I'm watching it, and there was a point where we get to like some crazy stuff that starts going down in the third act, and I literally my body, I changed from sitting like this to like leaning forward and getting like closer to the screen, and that's great. Like the movie just like kind of made me require myself to create like a pondering stance and get closer. I had to do that to watch the ending of this movie because it just pulls you in like that.
When I watch movies that get me so like emotionally, like what happens is I sit back and I'm like I sort of sink in and I just feel the weight of the movie like push on me, like I'm in the movie's hands and I've just succumbed to it, and it's great. So yeah, Arrival, we both recommend it. Watch it.
And by the way, you mentioned you said you'd give it like a 7 out of 10-ish.
7.5 out of 10.
If we're gonna do the 10 scale, are we gonna do the 10 scale? Is that gonna be our scale?
Well, that's what I do. If you don't, if you have a different scale, then go ahead and do.
We'll just do the 10 scale for now because I know what I would give it. I think that for me, this is a definite 8. Definite? Is that a word? Definite?
Yes, definite.
It's a word. Yes. Sorry. This isn't a show about vocabulary. This is a show about movies. And you have to have a vocabulary to talk about movies, but you don't have to have a great vocabulary to talk about movies. But I'm going to give this, I think for me, this is like a solid 8 out of 10 movie for me. And I think that won't really change much. I don't think that's going to move up or down for me. I think that I probably will consistently feel that this is about like an 8 out of 10.
All right. So the next, it's great that we had a great movie to talk about, or at least a very good movie to talk about, because I have a little anecdote to share about our next film, Shut In, starring Naomi Watts. So I remember I was on my way to the theater and you sent me a message and it was, I just watched Shut In. Oh my God, it sucks so much. Something to that effect. And I'm like, I'm walking into the theater right now.
Oh, that's great.
91 minutes later, I leave the theater. And we talked for about an hour and a half. Like, we hate this movie, we should probably say. Rasco, carry the torch. What do you want to talk about?
Okay, Shut In is one of those movies where you're watching it and you're like, wait a second, how did this movie get made? Like, we only get so many movies a year. How is this one of the ones where someone was like, hey, we gotta make this one. This is one of the ones we gotta make, right? We can't afford to not make this into a film, okay? This is a script, and it's, it knows exactly what it wants to be, and it's totally focused. And no, it's not. Shut In is the exact opposite of, like, all of those things. This movie does not know what it wants to be at all. And I'm shaking my fist like a politician.
This is a movie, one of the rare movies to have a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes right now. And I can understand why. I can't imagine anybody, like, if people can be apathetic towards it, people can be really hate fueled towards it, but I can't imagine anybody recommending it because it's not bad enough to be
Yeah,
funny.
it's
There are moments that are
impossible.
bad enough to be funny,
There are. There's some good moments, okay?
but as a whole, it's just a slog. And by the time you get to the end, it just doesn't make any sense. Um, we should probably say that this was directed by Farron Blackburn, who has directed episodes of Daredevil. I'm shocked to have that information. And then it was written by Christina Hodson. Remember that name because you're going to see a couple of her movies coming up. She is writing the upcoming Harley Quinn film, and she is writing the Transformers Bumblebee spinoff film.
Yeah, guys. And, if you really want to understand why this is so funny, you need to see Shut In, because Shut In's so bad. And, like, you look at it and you're like, oh my God, this is the kind of script, like, Shut In's the kind of script that it has to be made by someone that just is, like, doesn't know what they're doing. Like, this must have been made, like, she must have written this script when she was, like, in high school or something. And
This
like,
feels like everyone attached to this movie is now getting successful, like as far as the production level is. And like Naomi Watts, like a couple years ago, wasn't as big as she was and as big as she is. So there's like that weird middle ground. I feel like everyone just made this movie a while back and just like, oh my God, I hope we forget about it. And like Jacob Tremblay's in this movie from Room, and then all of a sudden, like the devils that be are like, ooh, we have this little thing that we can just put out into theaters right now, and everybody just heart sank, no, not that movie. And now it's out and everybody's like getting mad about it, and they're probably like, yes, we know it's bad, we didn't want it to be made. There's no proof of that, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case.
yeah, I agree. Can we talk about Diet Dane DeHaan?
Oh, okay, should we just go full spoilers on this?
You know what? We'll do it. Okay, guys? We're going to go full spoilers from now on, okay? So if you
So
don't want to be, because we can't talk about Shut In, it's much better if we talk about it with spoilers. It'll be much more entertaining to listen to us rip it apart. So from now on, spoilers for the movie Shut In that you're probably not going to go see. So
can I explain the premise before you talk about
yeah, go ahead,
spoilers?
Connor. Go ahead.
All right, so the premise of the film is Naomi Watts has a husband and a stepson, and she is a child psychologist. This father and stepson get into a car accident because they're shipping him off to some school because he got expelled. The father dies in this car accident, and the stepson is paralyzed and he's a vegetable. He can't really work. So it's 6 months later after this incident, and Naomi Watts is caring for her stepson and being and just is haggard by it. It's the stress is pulling her apart as well as she's being a child psychologist. But there's a deaf kid played by Jacob Tremblay. Good for him. He doesn't have to say any of this horrible dialogue. He just has to look puzzled, like we are in the audience. And what happens is when he goes missing, and then maybe there's some ghost stuff going on. There's a lot of nightmare sequences. Okay, and I counted. There are 2 nightmare sequences. There are 4 scenes where Naomi Watts is talking to her psychiatrist, played by Oliver Platt, on Skype or on a phone. 4 scenes. And there are 4 scenes, count them 4, of, oh my God, I heard a noise.
Let's go look.
I'm going to go look as slowly as, you know what, I've had it. It's in every horror movie. It's in every horror movie. I'm done with this. Why on earth do we have to have it every time it's in a horror movie? They're in a house and they hear a noise and they slowly go down the hallways and up the stairways and they look outside and they slowly look around. Okay, one of 2 things is going to happen. The first thing is nothing happens. So what was the point of all that? The second thing that happens is something goes boo.
Yeah. So, and again, that thing will be completely irrelevant. Or, you know, this film does a weird thing where instead of like you end a scene and then you pick up later on, you know, after one of those scenes where it's like, oh, I heard a spooky noise. Got to go find the spooky noise. And they go look for it. And then they get scared and then it's like, oh, and then you'll cut to like the next day or something and you move on. Well, this movie will do things where it's like, it's spoilers now, so I'm just going to say what happens. So there's a part where she's like opening this little door and the deaf kid's hands like come out of the door and he's grabbing onto her hands and she's like, ah! And she like pulls back and then like the scene just ends and we cut to the next morning and she wakes up and she's like on the floor in the exact position that like the scene ended. She had like passed out from that little kid's hands and like she just woke up, I guess didn't remember that there was a person inside of her little crawl space, and then she continues on with her day.
Yeah.
What's going on? Like, you should be like, wait a second. The reason I'm sleeping here on the floor, the reason I just woke up on the floor is because I passed out because I got scared of a little kid who was trying to come out of this little creepy door in my house. Maybe I should like, you know, look into that a little bit more. No.
Right. So the big twist of the film that comes at the top of the top of the never-ending third act.
The never-ending third act.
I'm so like.
It thinks it's The Shining. The third act thinks that it's The Shining.
I was just about to make that comparison. Remember in The Shining where Stanley Kubrick sustained like an aura of tension that didn't break for like 30 straight minutes, and how incredible that was? This thing goes on for 30 minutes and it's please be over. This is taking forever. But the big twist is, it turns out that her stepson, he caused the accident. We see that in the beginning where he goes, I hate you. And he like takes hold of the wheel. He takes a hold of the wheel and they get in a car accident. But then it turns out that he didn't want to go away from her. He's in love with his stepmom. He has an Oedipus complex. That's the twist. And he's been faking being a vegetable for 6 straight months.
Diet Dane DeHaan, people.
Yeah, so this kid looks like Dane DeHaan. Can't act to save his life. You know what I was thinking? Like what I was thinking before this big twist was revealed was somebody really wanted to get Dane DeHaan in this role, but then he was too busy, you know, being an actor, so he couldn't be in the movie. And they were like, but I really wanted Dane DeHaan. So they did a talent search and just looked for kids who looked like Dane DeHaan because this kid looks the most like Dane DeHaan. I don't care if he can't act, just put him in the movie. Yeah. And then that's what we got.
This movie, like, it's one of those movies where like you literally don't know what movie, like what kind of movie you're watching till like, literally the whole movie. You're like, what is this? Like, am I watching a ghost movie? Is this like a psychological like thriller? Is she going crazy? Like, what's going on? And it's not in like a fun movie? Way where you're like, oh, what's going on? It's like I'm supposed to be invested already. What? I don't know why I should care yet. It's really weird.
It's one of those. Do the people making this movie know what they're making? And so then the twist is that he was worried that the little kid might have seen him not being a vegetable, and so he had to kill him. But the little kid is in the crawl space, and he's a psycho because he's just crazy. The kid is the 16, 18-year old
He's
kid
just
is
crazy.
just crazy.
He's just
He's just
crazy.
crazy.
Yeah.
Don't question any motivation. He's just crazy. Um, but this raises questions like, okay, he's perched in front of a television in the living room all day long while Naomi Watts is in the next house doing her job, and he's perched by the television in front of a bunch of windows. People going in and out all day long could see him sitting there. So that kid might have seen me. I have to go and kill him. Why isn't this kid trying to kill every single person that comes up to his mother's house for psychology? I don't get it. There are characters that show up just to explain things to the audience, and then what happens is he's trying to kill Jacob Tremblay. So what he's doing is he's giving Naomi Watts his medicine to help to knock her out. So how is she not noticing that the pills are going at a faster rate? She should pick up on these things. And we're never shown that her giving the child her stepson pills. So we're never shown that bottle until like the third act, where it's like, "Have you been taking his pills? I didn't even know he had pills." Like it's such sloppy storytelling, such sloppy editing, and it's maddening. At how did this get made? How did this get written? The screenplay is so full of holes and so stupid. I
It feels like a movie that was made like 5 years ago, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's weird because it's trying. It does think that it's like almost. It does think it's The Shining by the end. It's
Yeah.
got such a long, dragged out ending that you're just like, I stopped caring like before the movie began. Like I don't care. Please end movie. God, it's so. And it's one of those movies where it's like, oh my God, you've had 500 attempts. You've had 500 chances where you could have just like killed this guy who's chasing you and dragging on this ending. He's trying to kill you. Kill him already. Like you've knocked him out like 5 times where he's been like incapacitated on the floor. Kill him.
Yeah. And then Oliver Platt shows up to die. So okay. Okay, can I say there's I can't believe that this one scene got edited. Like the way it's edited. I can't
great
believe it.
scene.
The way it's edited is right before the big twist. What happens is she's trying to get some lamps from down below. And by the way, Mrs. Tommy Wiseau is in this movie. We should
Oh
probably
yeah, oh yeah.
we'll get to her in just a second. But so Naomi Watts is going down into the basement to get some lanterns, but I guess the door is locked and she doesn't have the key. More on keys later, but she has a hammer and she starts smashing it. Right. Cut to the her laptop. Skype goes off. Boop 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 boop, and then and then it cuts back to her hitting the thing. Cut to Oliver Platt sitting at his desk, and then all of a sudden the screen comes on. She goes, "Oh, hi, I was just downstairs." Yeah, what? And then they have a whole conversation, and then she says, "Okay," and then they have the conversation. She says, "Okay, goodbye," and then it's like she hits the button and then gets up and leaves, but he can still see through her webcam.
Yeah, it's like you didn't hang up.
Like who does that? He's about to hang up, then he sees something in the background, and then it cuts back to Naomi Watts just hitting the hammer like she was 2 scenes ago. Here's how you should edit this scene, okay? Because the way it's edited, I'm like, oh, is the big twist that there's 2 Naomi Wattses? One is downstairs banging on the lock, and the other one is answering to Skype. Is that what's happening? No, it's just bad editing. Because the way it should happen is bang, 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 cut to laptop ringing, cut to, huh? Goes upstairs, cut to coming, then you have the scene, and then it shows her walking back downstairs and picking up the hammer and going back to work. That's how you edit it instead of hammer, 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 insert scene, cut back to hammer, hammer, hammer. It's so poorly edited. But then it's revealed like that he's not really incapacitated. He could walk the whole time.
It's like it's like the most hilarious twist. Like you want to start laughing at it, right? I think this is a little thing I just point out. There's a deaf kid. Everyone who handles this child, none of them speak sign language. They just all go, "Hey, Hey, little boy, you want to go back home? They just have to all take turns yelling at this kid. It's like, come on. Does no one care about this kid enough to learn how to sign? Come on.
Doesn't like one person get his attention by stomping on the ground at one point?
Hey! You want to go? Like, that's what they talk to this kid like.
Speaking of the kid, his opening scene is he's talking with Naomi Watts, and it's clear that he's deaf. And then like she goes to touch his face, and then he grabs her hand and gets really mad. It's like, oh, he doesn't. He's isolated. He doesn't like companionship. He's very much against that. Every single thing following that, he's like, oh, hi there, and like they give him a hug, and he gives him a big old hug, and he accepts clothes. It's like, but why is the first scene him like rejecting comfort? Like it's a horrible, faulty foundation to build a character on. That'd be like if the first thing we saw Luke Skywalker doing was, the Rebel Alliance is stupid. I just want to be a farmer. And then the next thing he's like, oh man, I can't wait to get out of here. Oh gee golly, wait, what? That's a weird way to introduce your character that way. But do you want to talk about Mrs. Tommy Wiseau?
Oh, okay. So you're familiar with the comedy genius, the creator of such classics as The Room. Well, we found pretty much the female version of Tommy Wiseau. And I don't have anything else to say about her other than you need to see this movie specifically just for her role in this film, because you'll know what it is. Talk about it, Connor. What did you think about it? And did you immediately know who it was? Because I told you, hey, Connor, you're going to find the female version of Tommy in this movie.
Yeah, the second she opened up her mouth. Oh, the star coming in. What?
Oh, hi, I brought groceries. Like,
oh, I remember when you used to have a husband. There's one last thing I'll say about this movie. There's a part where she walks into a room where she hears noises, and then the door slams behind her.
Oh
and
yeah.
locks. The person has a key and they lock it.
Yeah.
And then she goes, oh no, I'm locked in here. But you're inside. Isn't there a lock on the inside of a door?
What kind of room is this?
And then she goes, oh dear. And then she walks over to the door, and there's just so happens to be a ring of keys. Like, she just has a ring of keys in every room, I guess. Like,
and question, like, how many houses, because this didn't look like a really old house, did it? Like, how many houses do you have to literally like unlock the doors in every room with a key?
Like an old key too.
Yeah, it's like a key. Like, I'm the key master. This is my key. Like that kind of key. Like, I don't know. It's crazy. It's hilarious. It's really funny actually.
There's a couple of decent shots here. I don't think the color palette's bad. Naomi Watts does what she can. That's about it. I'll give Shut In a 2 out of 10.
I think a 2 out of 10 is a fair rating. I think I'm gonna give it a 2 out of 10 as well. Terrible movie. Right. You should go. I don't know. Try to see this movie at some point in your life, just so you can experience and look back on it as the weird quagmire that it is.
If you need something horrible to gauge what quality is,
that's a good yes. Way. Yeah, exactly. This is one of those movies where you go and you watch it because it's a really obviously flawed film that you can look at and go, okay, these are the things that on their own could have ruined a otherwise good movie, but these are all in one. So this is kind of like the checklist. This is how you look down and just see, how does a movie fail structurally at every level? And that's Shut In. So go and check this one out. This is great. Shut In. No.
All right. So next up on the docket is recommendations. So we're going to be recommending films based on. So we just talked about 2 films that came out this last weekend, and we're going to recommend movies based on criteria in those movies. I guess I should just go. We recently had a movie called Arrival that we talked about. And there has a lot to say about communication and time and all that sort of stuff. So I'm going to recommend a movie that I know a lot of people don't really much care for, but I think it is worth a watch if you haven't seen it. And that's M. Night Shyamalan's Signs. That's a movie that I remember watching when I was a kid on TV for the first time, and it scared me. But it was one of those movies where it scared me but it didn't scare me for too long. I was like, why did that scare me though? Why did it scare? I was like 8 when I first saw it. I was like, why did it scare me? And then I got really excited to learn more about it. And while I was still kind of like, ooh, that was kind of spooky, it was the thrill of learning about it was exciting. And uh, it's an entertaining enough alien invasion movie. Joaquin Phoenix steals the show in there. Mel Gibson gives a good performance. The kids, they're a little wooden, but yeah, I like Signs quite a bit. I'm recommending Signs based off of what we got recently in Arrival. And you know what? Shutton is a claustrophobic, like they're stuck mostly in one location. Signs is mostly in one location. You're seeing this alien invasion from the personal side of this family, and you only see the world through this farmhouse. And people will rag on this for its storytelling and consistencies. There are some snafus here and there, and there are some things that just don't really make a whole lot of sense and are kind of silly and a little stupid. And you can cherry pick and nitpick those all you want. But as a whole, I think it's a pretty decent movie, and it conveys its message and theme effectively.
Okay, so I was going back and forth between two movies, but I've decided my recommendation for this week is going to be David Cronenberg's The Brood, which
Great
is
movie.
a David Cronenberg movie that a lot of people probably don't know. It's one of his lesser known films, but it's one of his most personal films. And the reason I'm picking this is one, this is a stupid reason, but it has a lot of snow in it, okay? And Shut In had a lot of snow. All right. There's also there's children in The Brood, and there's a main child actress in the movie, and there's a boy child in Shut In, and it's actually reversed because in The Brood there's a daughter and a father, and in Shut In there's a small child and an older, not an older woman, but a woman. So you kind of reverse that, but these are stupid reasons. The real reason that I'm recommending it is because it's a movie that's got a big twist at the end, similar to Arrival, but it also has kind of like a science fiction-y horror type thing going on, but it's all about really personal, emotional things. And once you see Arrival, you'll understand what I mean by that, because Arrival is also incredibly emotional and personal for the characters involved, and that's the same goes for The Brood. So if you haven't seen David Cronenberg's The Brood, you need to go see that movie. It's awesome. It's totally worth your time. But yes, go see it.
Absolutely. Now we're gonna before we wrap up, we're gonna be talking. We're gonna trailer trash. We're gonna talk about trailers. We're gonna talk about two trailers tonight. We're gonna talk about the recently released second trailer for Kong Skull Island, coming out in March. This has a very impressive cast. I didn't even know John C. Reilly was in the movie until I saw this trailer. And I should probably mention, I never saw that first Comic-Con trailer. I just hadn't seen it. So this is my first time watching a trailer for Kong Skull Island, which is a movie I've been pretty excited for. It has a really good cast: Tom Hiddleston, Brie Larson, Samuel L. Jackson, John Goodman, and as I said, the aforementioned John C. Reilly and King Kong himself. It's a stacked cast. Yeah, this trailer, it's decent. There are things that intrigue me and things that I am hesitant towards, but it is a movie I'm going to see, and I should probably say I'm not much of a trailer guy. This does have a lot of those trailer conventions that bug me, but consider me moderately excited for this movie.
Okay. I absolutely love King Kong in all different shapes and sizes, right? So I was really excited to get this, as this being the crazy all-out action King Kong movie. I was ready for that, right? Like I'm all for it. I really liked the first trailer. First, I love the cast. I agree with you. The cast is awesome. I really, really liked the first trailer. I know you haven't seen it. I preferred the first trailer to this one. This, to me, kind of puts it in a different perspective. I had a kind of a different picture in mind. So I felt like this was kind of going back to I think it was I'm trying to think. It was the King Kong movie. Was it 83 or like 79 or 70?
The one with Jeff Bridges?
Yeah.
I'll fact check yet. So continue talking.
The first trailer really felt like that was we were kind of going back to that King Kong, and I was all for that. Not that it was going to be like a remake of that film, but it kind of was borrowing more from that, especially with the time period. And when this trailer, though, for me, a lot of the CGI was not working, and it kind of made it feel a little bit. And cartoony is not what I'm looking for, but a little bit more animated and heightened. And the first trailer didn't feel that way, and I was a little bit more excited for it based on the first trailer, honestly. But that doesn't mean that I'm not still excited for it just because it's King Kong, so I'm going to be excited for it. But I did like the first trailer, and I don't know. I'm still somewhat optimistic about this movie, and I'm still intrigued, and I'm still interested. But this trailer, it didn't really do much for me.
I hear you. You're thinking of King Kong 1976.
Okay, yeah.
With Jeff Bridges and Jessica Lange. So I agree with you as far as the CGI goes, especially on Kong. It did look more heightened and stylized than I was expecting. But with those exceptions out of the way, this movie looks very visually striking. The natives, the jungle, the architecture, it all looks very visually striking. And I was impressed by that, especially the part where all the stones have like the little markings on it, and it makes up a picture of Kong when you go by it. I thought that was really neat. And John C. Reilly, I actually thought was a pretty good comedic relief, where he's like, I call them skull dwellers. Oh, that's my first time actually saying it out loud. It sounds stupid. Just call them whatever you want to call it. I thought that was pretty good. And that's a kind of comedic relief line in a trailer that I would usually resist, and that was not well delivered or well edited into the trailer. And maybe it works better in context. But John C. Reilly is so naturally likable with his comedy that it worked for me quite a bit. The action, it looks like they are going for a more full stop action thing. And the thing, though, that I'm more hesitant towards is I'm scared that John C. Reilly is just going to be the guy to explain the mythology, because it looks like this movie is really trying to set up a really interesting mythology, the same way Gareth Edwards' Godzilla movie set up, used the mythology from that original Godzilla movie, and this is supposed to be in the same universe because we're going to have a King Kong versus Godzilla movie coming later. So, one second. I'm trying to remember. Picking up the train where it left off. Oh yeah. So I really hope we're exploring the mythology and the history of this island in a very natural way, where it's peeled to us naturally as the story goes on, and we learn more about this island as the story continues, as opposed to just John C. Reilly explaining everything about it. That would be disappointing. And right, based on the trailer, it could go either way. But I am moderately excited.
I think that. Oh, what was I about to say? There was a few shots in this that I really liked, and then there was. I'll name one of the shots that I loved from the trailer, and one that I hated. The one that I loved was when you see Kong walking through the water, and he's just like, that looked great. I thought that looked awesome. You then later on see a shot where it's Brie Larson and Tom Hiddleston, and Kong just like standing there looking at them, and it looks like they just are like pasted on a green screen background that was rendered, and he just it looks really bad. Like, that shot doesn't look good, and that it's almost framed comedically, like the way that the composition of that, and how it's so flat, how it's just like straight up the side of both of them looking straight at each other. It's like comedic and weird. I don't like that.
It's a flat angle. Yeah. The shot that I didn't like was the explosion and then Kong's face, and then like Samuel L. Jackson which I will say though, everything that isn't really heavy on the CG does look really good, and I think the costuming looks really good too. Is that all you have to say? That's all I really have to say about Kong Skull Island.
Last thing I'll say this. I love how the natives have like orange paint on them. That's just so cool and striking and like exotic.
And it matches with the environment very neatly, especially with like the green of the trees, and that does make it visually striking. So the last thing we're going to be talking about tonight is going to be one more trailer, and that is going to be the new second and presumably final trailer for Ben Affleck's Live by Night. This is Ben Affleck's directorial follow-up to his Academy Award-winning film Argo, which won the Best Picture, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Film Editing back in 2013 for his 2012 film. And it is been confirmed that this is going to have limited December 25th engagements, which will make it eligible for the Academy Awards this upcoming year. It puts it in this awards race. And it will be everywhere on January 13th because I'd like to, um, maybe have it considered in my favorite movies of the year. Um, so that being said, I am excited for this movie, but the first trailer was fine, and this trailer I think is better. The action looks balls to the wall and really cool, and I think these characters look neat, and I think Ben Affleck in this world is nice. And the thing that's really bugging me, and it's something that we've seen since Wolf of Wall Street, as the you call them swagger movies,
Yeah, I
Rasco.
call them swagger movies.
It's like the big hey movies where it's rise and
Making
fall.
money. Oh,
And of course,
corruption and greed. Like it's cinema of excess, but I like to
yeah.
call it swagger films.
And so this is like, and of course, it's all derivative of Scarface, but the recent resurgence can pretty much be pinpointed to Wolf of Wall Street. Um, but I mean, stuff like uh, War Dogs. I
Gold.
think that, yeah, that new movie Gold, like renegades who have made, like, oh, look at the money, the gold. But anyways, and there's like, and there's a few others I can point my finger to. But uh, this doesn't look like it's going in that direction. And but the tagline all of those movies have, those swagger movies, is an American dream, the American dream. And they use American dream ironically, and it's it wasn't really cool. It wasn't clever when Michael Bay used that for Pain and Gain, and it's still not very clever. It's just the American dream. How ironic is it? There's robbery and corruption and money and
Yeah.
scantily clad strippers and stuff. But the thing is, with this one, and I like how it's like the price of the American dream or something, and it's they're using that phrase that I am getting tired of in marketing, but they're turning it on its head instead of using it ironically. It's like, people want this thing, but there is a price you have to pay if you want to get it if you're trying to get at it from a certain um, place in life. But I think Ben Affleck looks really cool in this. I think the period detail looks awesome. Looks really cool, very visually striking. The cinematography looks awesome. I think the dialogue has a neat sound to it, really nice rhythm. I just wish it had a better stinger. I think Elle Fanning just says, "Oh, we're all going to hell." Oh, that's how you end okay. But uh, yeah, I think overall, I'm still not out of my mind excited for it. But it's still a movie I'm more excited for it based on the people who are attached to it rather than what I'm necessarily seeing. But I'm just not much of a trailer guy. I think it's cut very similar to other awards, uh, darling action sort of movies. So it is what it is. But yeah, I'm definitely gonna see it, and I am excited to watch it.
Okay, so I'm really excited for this movie. After I watched the first trailer, I really like the first half of that trailer is really just kind of punchy, generic trailer editing. The second half of that trailer, I really love. So this trailer is, I think, overall a better trailer. It's not really important to talk about how good a trailer is, but I think this is probably a better trailer overall. But I still do like that first trailer quite a bit. But this movie, I'm really excited for this movie because the thing that it just strikes me as such everything that we're seeing so deliberate, and it just feels like every camera movement, every composition of every shot of everything we've seen in this movie it just feels like, how can I make every single frame as interesting as possible and have as much, I guess, visual interest in as many different aspects of how I'm presenting what I'm showing you? Whether that be like how you see a guy falling down a staircase in the first, I don't know if this shot was in the second trailer. The first trailer, you see a guy like falling down through like a spiral stairwell, and the camera is like below him, like pulling back, coming down the stairway, and it's like twirling. And like there's just so many cool shots like that. This movie looks awesome. I'm so excited for this movie. It looks so cool. I'm sorry. I'm just gushing.
Yeah. I've been there. I get it. I'm very excited. It looks like, but well, what I will say is that it does look like they're holding back the goods. They're not.
Yeah.
This is definitely a trailer that isn't showing, and I you can tell that it's not showing its hand, and I like that. Um, we get a lot of neat little peeks into what's to come. So that's really our show for today. Thank you guys very much for watching, and remember to leave a comment at the bottom. We didn't get around to seeing Almost Christmas, neither me or Rasco. I don't think Rasco's even going to watch it, but I will watch it, and we will talk about it next time. At least I will talk about it next time. But and on top of that, we there's a possibility of seeing five additional movies on top of Almost Christmas. We will definitely be talking about Fantastic Beasts and where to find them. Uh, I know we're definitely both of us are watching Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk. I know Rasco's been pumped for Bleed for this. Rasco, it's like those two movies you've just been stoked for like months. They're both coming out on the same weekend. Merry Christmas. Um, and then there's the new movie with Haley Steinfeld and Woody Harrelson, Edge of 17, and a movie I know, again, another movie we've both been very excited for, Moonlight. So a possibility of six movies next week. I'm really excited for a lot of these movies, and thank you guys very much for watching, and we'll see you next week.